a little bit about how this morning is going to go. We are going to hear from the county executive. We're going to hear from a number of county council members. We're going to hear from a number of community leaders who are intimately involved in making sure that this bill succeeded. And then we're going to have a bill signing right here. The county executive is going to sign the official version of the bill and a number of ceremonial copies for people to walk away with today. So you will see and remember at the end of the event, we're going to be doing the actual bill signing right here. So today culminates decades of work on behalf of so many people in this community, especially our county executive, Mark Erich, who has been part of this effort for, again, years through the service at Tacoma Park City Council, on the county council, just as a private citizen agitating for change. So, and there are plenty of people here who have been part of that fight for those many years, and we're going to hear from several of you to talk about how this happened. But first, we're going to start with our county executive, Mark Erich.
Thank you all very much. I could talk about this topic forever, which I'm sure everybody's dreading. So I want to just thank everybody involved, all the council members who made this happen, and all of you who also made this happen. This never happens by just council members sitting in the front of the room. The ability for the council to take this seriously always depends on the movement out of the community. And I remind people, in the minimum wage fight, which was the last big fight of this kind of scale, it started from a proposal from me, but it wouldn't have gone anywhere if you hadn't stood up and said this is what needs to happen. And that's how real policy gets made. And I'm so glad to see everybody here today, because this is your victory. And it's a victory for the people who work for you, they work with you, and it's a victory for everybody in this county. And there's a long list of organizations, which I don't have with me, but there's somebody's going to read the long list of organizations. But you all played just a critical role in getting this done, and I'm really happy to be here. I want to thank my housing director, Scott Burton, Scott was able to bring a very analytical approach to this, and his work, I think, was essential in working with the council, because he had to be able to show people how things would work and what this would mean. And I'm really happy I hired him, and I think he did an amazing job, and he's off on vacation, and he really deserves the vacation. I was bugging him at the airport last week with a question. He seemed to leave. And I just thank all the council members who talked and compromised and came together. There were 3 different bills in this. There was a bill for Bill, there was a bill for Natalie, there was a bill I sent over. And we took 3 bills and made sausage, which is what the legislative process is, to come up with a bill that could get 7 bills. And that's the critical thing. People were not wedded to only one way of doing this, but they were able to reach an agreement on how to do it best. And so I'm really excited about this. I've been working on this almost 16 years, first as a council member. I drafted 2 drafts of the stabilization bill. I circulated it to my colleagues. In 12 years on the council, not a single colleague walked into my office and said, "Can we talk about this?" And I put it out there, and it fell like a tree in a forest, which nobody hears. And that was, unfortunate. I came off the city council in Tacoma Park. I served there starting in 1987, and we had rent stabilization when I came in there. We still have it today. We faced a crisis around 2000 when we lost a court case, and we had to make major changes in our law. We made changes in our law to make sure it stayed legal and defensible. And I wanted to thank that council for the willingness to actually change the law rather than walk away from it. Because it's real easy to walk away from things, particularly when the judge says you have to fix it. And we actually fixed it. So I was really proud then to be part of that. But I also know, from Tacoma Park, what I saw in terms of improving people's lives. We have one of the most stable communities in the county. People don't move. They don't move, and people say this is a bad thing. Homeowners don't move. People live in their houses as long as they possibly can, but when rent tenants don't move, it's like, oh my God, something's wrong. Tenants move because they can't afford the rent anymore. Most of the time. That's the truth. And you live from year to year. When the rent reaches a point you can't afford it anymore, you're looking for another place. So that homeowners don't face that. I keep trying to talk to the broader public that homeowners don't have any of the experiences that tenants have. They don't worry about where they're going to find a house next year. They don't worry about, is my rent going to go up 6% or 8% or 10%, because they've got that long-term stability. And the idea that we have in society a whole class of people who don't know what stability means is actually a problem. People ought to be secure. And the most immediate things you see, the two things I'll just mention quickly. One is, I was a former school teacher. Stable rents and stable communities, that meant kids stayed in school and multiple children from families went to the same school. They build relationships in the community. Kids aren't traumatized. If you don't think having to move every year or two is traumatizing for a little kid, you're wrong. It is stressful. When you hear parents saying, we have to find another house, we can't afford to live here anymore, I'm going to give up my friends, I'm going to give up my school, I got to go someplace else, that is not healthy for children. So I think, the things that rent stabilization does, it provides community stabilization. That's good for education. The other thing it does for adults, it gives them a reason to get involved in the community. If I think I'm leaving next year, then I'm not involved in community groups, because the community I'm fighting for today might not be the community I'm going to live in a year from now. If you know that you're going to have the ability to stay where you live, then all of a sudden things matter to you. Things you put up with because you thought it was going to be temporary, you decide, I'm not going to stay anymore. I'm going to live here. I want you to do something about this. And you know it is homeowners, because homeowners will always come to you and say, I pay taxes here, I want this fixed. Renters can't say that. And they don't say that. And what you want is everybody to say, I pay taxes here. This condition, this situation is not acceptable. I want you to do something about it. So while it may create more people demanding action out of us, that's a good thing. I welcome that. Some critics say this is going to stifle development, and the part I love is it's the same ones who complain there hasn't been any development here for the last 2 decades, but there was no rent stabilization. So blaming something on this bill that is a pre-existing condition is a bit ridiculous. And the fact is that there's a report that Park and Planning did, my favorite organization. I always like to cite things they say, particularly when they're factual reports. And when they studied the White Flint situation, they said, why is housing being built in White Flint? The landlord said, potential builder said, because the rents aren't high enough. So here we are trying to stabilize rents, and for them, they're not building, not because of rent control. And they can set the rents at any level they want, but the rents aren't high enough. And that comes down to, the folks who've been able to move into Montgomery County often don't have the rents that would justify $2,500 a month in rent for a one-bedroom apartment. It's also, a failure of the planning department. And I'll say this bluntly. They don't plan for complete communities. They plan for complete streets. But the idea that you would have planned Bethesda for a variety of housing to serve a mix of population rather than settling for 15% affordable units, and then an enormous gap. The average MPV in Montgomery County for one bedroom is about $1,600, and 2 bedrooms, $1,800. I checked this morning. 1 bedroom starting rents in Bethesda, $2,500. 2 bedroom starting rents, $3,500. $2,500 starting rent requires $100,000 income. If you spend the most that you're recommended to spend is 30%. And that $3,500 starting rent requires $140,000 income. That's what they build there. And it never dawned on Park and Planning that you're building a very segregated community. This is what your idea of housing is. So this is on all of us, and we've got to do a better job in terms of how we plan things. streets. You ought to be planning complete communities. And, you know, the other point I'll make is Montgomery County has 40,000 approved units almost in the pipeline. That means the developer could go in and pull their building permit. There's not a regulatory hurdle left to climb, and it's still sitting there. And that goes back to the comment about the rates aren't high enough. So enough about blaming this action that this council made for the lack of housing that hasn't occurred for the last 20 years. We need to get real about what's going on here and deal with it. To those who say the market's going to solve the problem, there's a recent report from the Harvard Joint Center on Housing Studies. This just came out. I just saw it a couple of days ago. And it said this country is having a housing boom. Unfortunately, none of it's for low-income people. It is all focused at the top tier of incomes. It is not focused. And so if anybody says there's not demand, I would submit that when you've got 50,000 people in this county making $50,000 or less and paying half their income for rent, there's plenty of demand. Nobody's meeting the demand. So let's stop pretending that demand will solve the problem. Milton Friedman does not have any answers to our question. So we're actually on track for housing numbers that I think the council would be happy with. That we were able to correct the mistake by one of the housing reporting agencies, because our numbers apparently weren't going in. We produced almost 4,000 units the last 2 years in Montgomery County. But 15% of them will be MPUs, so do the math. I mean, it's like 600 units a year at best. So that's what we're doing. We are building. And we're on track to build 40,000 over 10 years and get really close to it. But that's not enough in terms of who lives here and what we need to provide. So there are a lot of things that are going on. This bill is going to make an enormous difference for people. This is worth fighting for. And there are people who are going to be able to stay in their homes and have some security, have a sense of what their long-term costs are going to be, and make decisions about where they want to live and be able to stay there. And I really want to thank the 7 of you. Evan's not here, I know he's on vacation, but it's so loud, everybody should do that. Is that it? Okay. Okay. Still, well, he's working someplace else. There's plenty of work to do. So I want to thank you all for coming together on this. I know how hard this was. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of talking among everybody in this group to come together. And if people had not been open to listening to each other and working with each other and trying to get to yes, because it's not yes for anybody individually. It was yes for the community. That, to me, is the important thing. I could care less about ideology and all this other stuff. This is about human beings. And it's about what happens to human beings in their lived experiences in Montgomery County. At the end of the day, people were able to come together around what's going to happen to people and not fuss over what belief system does this reflect. It's about the belief that human beings should have stable housing and should be able to live in this community. That's the only recognition of the belief system we need. If everything was done like that, we'd have far fewer problems in society if we focused on what do people need and what we need to do to treat them right. So I'm excited about this. I'm optimistic that we're going to continue to make progress. There are some other things we need to do. We need to deal with limited loss of affordable housing. This county started with 42,000 affordable units in 2000. If you've gone back another 10 years, they probably would have been twice as many, but 42,000 in 2000. It was down to about 22,000 by 2020. Parking planning projects to lose another 11,000 by 2030. That was pre-COVID. COVID has already known accelerated rents. So we're losing the naturally occurring affordable housing, which are units that have no controls on them. These are just units that the market has raised the prices that people live there can no longer afford. We need to deal with more ownership in the community, continuing to provide only rental housing. This is frankly on our nonprofit partners as well. Everybody's got to shift their thinking to wealth building and equal opportunity. If all we offer tenants, people in lower incomes, which frankly Montgomery County people making $70,000, $80,000 a year in some cases, if all we offer them is rental units, they never get to build wealth in the community. So there's this enormous wealth divide between white and black people and brown people. And that's something we've got to tackle, because if it's not going to go away by itself, it's going to require deliberate actions. And we've got to be creative about what the county does. So we've been creative. We bought Westchester West. We put a lot of money in to protect that development. We've been working with on Randolph Road to build the next project that has both rental and ownership, but almost all the units, I think all the units there are actually affordable. So those are things we need to do. We've had council support for those things. So stay tuned, more is going to be coming, and we're going to need more support to do this. But this is probably the most righteous fight anybody can have. There's nothing more righteous than fighting for a person's right to stay and enjoy a life that's stable and have the opportunities. And I just want to say this is a momentous occasion for Montgomery County. It is, other than the minimum wage law, probably the two most important things that we have done in this county in terms of equalizing things and raising people up. And so I want to thank the council for everything you did. Give them and give yourselves an applause for what you did. If you have not been in those things, if these issues have been debated in empty halls, the outcome would have been different. Without your presence, and you've got to keep this in mind, without your presence, things do not move. So be present, be regularly present. What we do up here matters. And what we do up here, if we don't hear from you, is done partly in a vacuum. So please continue your work. Thank everybody for what they did. It's a really great victory today that I'm really happy we're celebrating this. And I spent a long time trying to get this done. I will say finally, it was good to have a council where this discussion did not fall on deaf ears. And with the election of this council in November, they started on the work to create this bill within a month. So that says a lot about what elections can do and why elections matter. That election changed the debate in Montgomery County. And again, you're the ones that voted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, County Executive Erich. We also, of course, want to thank not just the council members, the council staff, your individual staff members, for doing that, and certainly led by Valeria Carranza, who's here representing the council president. This is not just local news, this is national news. And which is why we're thrilled to have our a representative from our fine U.S. Congressman Jamie Raskin. Kathleen Connor is here. Congressman Raskin and County Executive Erich have been partners in good crime. What's the John Lewis? Good trouble. Good trouble. Good trouble. Partners in good trouble. In good trouble. For years. So, yeah. So we are now going to hear first from the two co-sponsors, the two sponsors of the bill. And I think it's very interesting when they come up. Councilmember Natalie Fani Gonzalez and Councilmember Sidney Katz. Councilmember Katz is the longest serving member of the County Council. Councilmember Fani Gonzalez is tied for the newest member of the County Council, which shows the dynamic and the partnership that came together to pull together a wonderful bill. So, Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
Good morning. I would say this is not a new issue for me. As many people know, I've been working on housing for several years, coming from the Park and Planning Commission, and also when I was at CASA many years ago. I think the challenge number one that we faced was fear. That was it. And I knew it right from the beginning. And I think understanding fear is crucial if you really want to pass laws. It's not my way or the highway. It's compromising and listening to those who have fear and understanding their struggles so you can actually accomplish how you're doing. so we can accomplish something positive. I'm the type of person that if I'm gonna do something, I get it done. And I also am the type of person that when I see that something is about to fail, I gotta do something about it no matter what. So when I saw one of the bills being introduced, I said, oh boy, we are in trouble. Okay, so I said, let's make let's make an alternative and then have people come together and get something done on this important issue because, and I said it to many of our allies from the very beginning, this is gonna get done this year, right now. There's no way I'm gonna be dealing with this every single year within the next 12 years, not happening under my watch. So we did what I had to do to make it happen. And I am so grateful to Councilmember Sidney Katz because he was there with me from the very first day. It's about compromising and understanding that for us to build community, we need to work together. And this idea that, especially coming from the Park and Planning Commission, this idea that all developers think one way and all progressives think another way, it's false. I've had developers that have come to me and said, Natalie, this is a good thing. Natalie, or average rent increase is only 2%. Natalie, being able to predict what's gonna happen in Montgomery County is good for business. That's why I fought so hard against the sunset. That would have killed this whole thing. I have my values and there are certain things that I wouldn't compromise and all those things, the really bad things actually, happen on the bill, thank God, but also understanding my position and understanding that it's not just the message, but who the messenger is, okay? There are amendments that we debated on last week on full council that honestly, we were very intentional on who the sponsor of those amendments will be. It wasn't that it happened right out of the blue. It took a lot of compromising to say this person will do this one, this other person will do that one. Because at the end of the day, I need 6 votes. It's math. What do we need to do to make sure we have the 6 votes that we need to get this passed? And we ended up with 7. That's a beautiful thing, and it's a reflection of this county. We love talking about values, and we love to romanticize this. But if you talk about values, you gotta walk the talk, period. And I think Montgomery County is an example throughout the nation that, yes, we want businesses, yes, we want development, but also we wanna make sure that we protect the workforce. We wanna make sure that we protect our tenants, our residents, people of all income levels. That's our duty, that's why I got elected. I'm not doing things because I wanna go to the next thing and get the headlines and get the tweets. No, I'm gonna do something because I wanna be able to find a solution that moves us forward and not being stuck with this for 12 years. So that's the difference, and I think that's what we did here. I'm very proud of every single council member who's here today, including Council President Alan Glass, for their leadership. I know it was not easy, but we got it done. The bill has, as you all know, very quickly, it's 3 plus CPI, which is the inflation cap at 6. Again, I chose 3 because the average rent increase was 3. So it was my way to say, hey, I'm going above what you're doing right now. You shouldn't be complaining. Cap at 6. I was able to get 6 votes. You won. Actually, it was minutes before I walked onto the PHP committee, the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, where I was able to secure that 6 votes. And I had to say, I am very thankful to Councilmember Sales, who that day, she put it in writing. She said, I want something that will be capped at either 5 or 6. Most council members refused to put things in writing, even though I was asking them, help me out. I'm in the committee, put it in writing. Don't just tell me that you're gonna go for it in full council, put it in writing now. She did. And I love her for this one. The new part, other issue, then we have to compromise. The new construction, you're gonna be exempt if for 23 years. It's not 23 years since the bill starts. It's like 23 years, like for example, you count from today minus 23, and it continues to move that target. That's what it passed, and people need to have that clear. After this, we're gonna work on the regulations, and all those definitions will be part of the bill, so stay tuned on that, and that all comes in front of the county council, and you all can see it and share your opinion. Exemptions, very important, but also making sure that this myth that haven't rent stabilization is against investment is false, and that's the bottom line. And I think that's a message not just for that we're saying here in Montgomery County, that's something that it has to be spread around the nation, because every single municipality and county and city should be doing the same thing as we did today. It's not easy, but it's our duty. With that, I'm going to invite my friend, Councilmember Sidney Katz, for being such a leader and sticking up with me after all this. So thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you. I did appreciate you saying, not the crime part. I didn't think that was good. But I did appreciate the agitating part. And you could say that not just on this topic about Mark. He's an agitator. But this really, and I have to tell you candidly, I mean, it's so much has already been said, and we try my best not to repeat it, but this is really a place where I didn't believe I'd be standing here when the whole thing started. I did not. But this is so much about economic development, and that gets passed over. You know, everybody, and we do, we need to make sure that our economic development is going to be much better than what it's been. But when you have economic development, you need people to work. You need people to have a place to live. You need a place. You need so much, and this is, I keep talking about a puzzle. This is a puzzle that needs to fit together. Let's face facts. This process was not perfect. It was not. We were all over the place. You need conversations, but we were all over the place. We had people that were very, I guess the word annoyed or beyond, about that we would even consider this. But we needed to do something. And the question is, what is the something that you end up doing? We listened to all. And I know there are people who are still very annoyed at this. But we listened to all. This is not about just rent control or rent stabilization. This is about everything associated with it. There are, as Natalie pointed out, there are so many exemptions on this. This is not strictly, this is the price. There's 23 years if someone decides that they're going to build, and we need to talk about that in 2 seconds, but there's 23 years that they're exempt from this. 23 years. A patent is only 20 years, and we've exempted them for 23 years. We are not stifling investment. We are saying, please invest. We will work with you. And we need to make certain that all of us work together to make this a great success so that other areas, so other places in America, not just Maryland, but in America, can say, you know what, they always said rent control didn't work, except there's a place called Montgomery County, Maryland, and it worked. And that's what we did when we did minimum wage, and we had a few conversations about minimum wage, might we add. But we got it there. And what we did is we worked together. We were concerned not only about the people getting the minimum wage, we were concerned about the people paying the minimum wage. We were concerned about the small business. We were concerned about everything. It's not just what's on the poster in front of you. It's how deep it goes. And that's what we did. We need to make certain that we continue to streamline if someone wants to build here. We need to make it so that they can want to come, that they don't have the excuses. We need to remind them that if you do a capital improvement, that is an addition to what you're doing. We want your return on investment. We want you to invest, and we want your return on investment, and we need to work together on that. At the end of the day, this was an absolute compromise. Absolute compromise. And sometimes compromises are, not always, as we say, free. But it was a compromise to get us where we needed to be. This is all about supply and demand. This room needs to continue to work together. My colleagues, and I'm very proud of all of them. I agree, not just with the groups that's here, but I also wanted to make certain that the group that didn't vote for this didn't vote for this for a variety of reasons. They also want to make sure that Montgomery County is the best place that it can possibly be. We didn't agree on this topic, and we need to move on and agree on the topics we can agree on. But all of us have the best interest of the county at heart, and all of us are going to have to work together to continue to make Montgomery County the greatest place in the entire United States. Thank you all for listening.